قدرنيش
قديش عمرك؟
4 سنين.
We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, start trying to regulate thoughts, start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
I'm not a Star Trek fanatic. I'm not a Trekkie. I'm doing this video because I grew up on Star Trek. I saw it on television when they were airing it, and I recently found some really old tapes. Somebody had recorded the episodes of Star Trek off television in the early 80s. And while I was watching them, I noticed there are scenes that were in the episodes that haven't been marketed with the bonus features on the DVDs that they've come out with. Now, this is what I'm talking about. These are the extended versions of the show that they included with other kinds of bonus materials, like the fact that they remastered them, they enhanced the visuals of the spaceship of the Enterprise, and several other things. Amongst the DVDs that I've gone through, I found that a few of the videos that were recorded back in the early 80s were slightly altered from the original prints, at least that the originals had some things in them that weren't in the later redubbed versions. When Spock was hanging from the tree in This Side of Paradise, I noticed that Kirk walks up to him and clears his throat. Well, in this scene, there's no music. There was no music at all in that sequence. And that's just one of many other things I've seen having to do with how they've definitely made alterations to the actual episodes over the years since airing them on television, because otherwise it wouldn't be like that. Also, another thing I never knew this, when they air these things as marathons on television, I got probably 3-4 hours worth of episodes thinking I was going to get all of them. They're not complete. They edit those even further down because they have to be able to confine them, or, you know, like they don't have so long they can air each show, so they splice out certain parts. So even in that regard, they rip you off because you don't get the entire episode, since they have time constraints about how long they can squeeze the episodes into that marathon time. And I guarantee you Paramount probably does that, because when they're airing these things as a part of a multiple airing of shows, they themselves have the right to restrict some scenes, because what they want is they wanted you to buy all of them when they came out later on VHS and then DVD later. But then you watch even today on MeTV and you see that they don't restrict even giving us those additional special effects scenes of the starship having redigitized and recreated with newer graphics behind them and all the rest of it. That's just unbelievable to me. Why would they do that for television? But then when you had the chance to watch them in earlier airings on, like the Sci-Fi Channel, they limited it even on cable to certain permitted things that they would show you on TV compared to what now they allow everybody to see. So it's bizarre how they can do these shots and not tell you, this is why we have to do it this way, or they just kind of rip you off, and then it's their option because they own the rights to the show, but then they don't give you, a fan, the choice to see any and every other version of the episode, whereby they altered certain things that later on they put in, like the music. That was just one example. I wonder to myself, why would anybody pay $60, $70 for each of these volumes and then find out that we were ripped off because they don't have every scene of Star Trek in these episodes? Maybe you're going to say, well, this is all that exists. Maybe you're going to say, well, the copies that the stations aired had the original negatives of the episode, and over time Paramount edited out certain things because they didn't think it was relevant. it was unimportant, whatever. Now, you know, in this culture today, anything that was derogatory against women, they obliterate these things from old classic sci-fi shows or any other show because they don't want to make women look like idiots, inferior, vulnerable. And to me, as a customer, if I buy something, I want it to be intact. I want everything there. I don't care whether or not it's derogatory towards women, if it's against radical feminist viewpoints, whatever. You know, this is the same philosophy blacks take. They want to obliterate every movie that ever had anything to do about slavery. That's one reason they have now boycotted Gone with the Wind. Because one, it had to do with the Civil War, and number two, it showed slaves. And you cannot change history, folks. I don't care how hard you think you can obliterate it from future generations. If we don't learn from the past, we'll repeat it over and over again. That's a very famous quote. And you see women in our culture today saying, no, we can't remember things that we don't like because it makes us look bad. It makes us look weak. It makes us look vulnerable to men. And I got news for you. That is how God created us. Man is supposed to be the superior gender because of one reason. God made man first. He intended man to be the head of the household. Women were supposed to be his companions, his assistants. He did not create woman first. He did not create women to be higher in status quo towards men. That was never God's intention. And what you see, at least in our earliest science fiction shows in the 60s, was men still saw the philosophy that had always existed for 2,000 years. And you think, just in the past 60 years have we decided, oh, we got to scratch all the things that we've lived by traditionally for the last 2,000 years. You don't flush 2,000 years of history and say, we can't have it like that anymore because it makes women feel that they're not equal. Well, I've said this, and I'll say it again. Blacks will never get beyond slavery because in their minds they see themselves inferior. They still see themselves as slaves or their ancestors. If you don't ever get beyond that, and if you just keep dwelling on it and harping on it, the only inevitable outcome is people will never change how they see you, how they relate to you, because you yourself don't want to forget. You yourself don't want to get beyond that fact. And so when people bring it up, it's like you think of yourself going backwards, but it's about preserving history. It's remembering what history is about. And if you try and obliterate it out of history books, if you try to take it out of the equation of people remembering, all you're doing is you're failing your own ancestors because you're saying, I don't want to remember that. I don't want to remember you. And that's like saying we got to erase you out of our history because now we don't want to see that anymore. We don't want to think about the fact that it ever happened. So you're insulting your ancestors when you do that because you're saying we don't want to remember. This is a subject too I'm going to bring up real quick. When we started learning the culture of Africa, people were bringing up the fact that all the movies that were made over the past 100 years about Egypt, about Cairo, it defamed blacks. It put them down, made them look bad. And the irony is, we've seen this in the Civil War history. There were many black men who were very wealthy, and even before the time when the Civil War ended and you had Abraham Lincoln freeing all the slaves, there were black slave owners who had plantations especially in the South, in Louisiana, in Florida, in Georgia. And nobody thinks about talking about that because they think, oh, it's not about putting down any black man, because we're only emphasizing, we're going to dwell on the fact that whites were the ones that had slaves, not that blacks ever had slaves, which they did. And that, in a nutshell, is why you see so much of our history, even in the relationship to our television shows, our past records. They're being altered, they're being changed, they're being eradicated because of this idea that for globalism, for socialism to work, everybody has to be equal. That's how they see themselves. Everybody has to be the same. But changing what history has recorded and shown does not help anybody, because all you're doing is trying to disavow history and think that in future generations people won't look back and say, why did they do that? Why did they erase history? We know it's still here. You can take it out of a book. But there's another thing that blacks don't realize, and that is that from father to son, people pass on information, and it has nothing to do with what they learn in school. It's about your parents, your grandparents telling future children they have, and this way it continues as far as the information. So if you think you can obliterate slavery because you boycott films or you boycott certain things that doesn't matter to you, it is not going to change the fact that there are other ways that parents continue to instill history into their children, and it's outside the scope of your power of authority as a radical feminist, as a black supremacist. And there are black supremacists because they think we're going to destroy America, but to do that we have to eradicate as many whites as possible. And the coronavirus that we're experiencing, the blacks are in an uproar because they think the whites somehow created this virus, and it singles out African Americans as far as the number of people who are dying from coronavirus. You cannot blame a virus unless it's something that was created by Americans, and it wasn't. It was created in China. They released it through a lab. And guess who has direct contacts with communist nations, folks? The Illuminati itself. The Illuminati planned the coronavirus. The Illuminati planned for Barack Obama to start his globalism in America in 2009 when he took over. His dictatorship for 8 years was proof positive that this is what the Illuminati's endgame is: to destroy individual freedom, to destroy who we are as Americans. The coronavirus did a lot more than just is killing people. It has destroyed the economy. And everybody's trying to point it directly at Obama, at Trump. They're trying to point it in Trump's direction because they're saying, well, it's his fault. It's his fault. He didn't do it. He created from a stagnant economy that Obama left, and Trump brought it back in 4 years. And what, in 2 months' time, the coronavirus has totally eradicated that economy. And now they're trying to blame Trump for it. And Trump didn't start the coronavirus. The socialists create whatever means they have to have in order to achieve their ultimate goal, which is domination of the world, domination of free nations like America. And to do that, they have to totally just overflow the infrastructure of our country, and that's why they've been saying over and over again, we got to let the Mexicans come in for free, because that will totally anesthetize our economy to the point where there isn't any. It'll bankrupt the entire country. They've been saying that about certain states, that they're going to have to file bankruptcy because their supplies and their demand for health products for the public, it succeeded even their ability as a state to have a budget to pay civil servants, to pay the health professionals, those in government. And now they're saying without federal help, these states are going to file for bankruptcy. That is the ultimate goal, folks, of what socialism is, of what communism is about. And that's why they're doing this. That's why they're doing this. To destroy our country's economy. And then in the process to say, if we put somebody like Biden back in there, it's just like opening the door for Barack Obama to come right back in again. Because we had 8 years of a dictator who said you got to buy insurance. It's not your choice to choose whether you buy insurance anymore. We're going to make you buy insurance. That was the first foolproof indicator of a socialist global world order, mandating what you can do, what you can't do. This whole nation would be a perfect episode for Star Trek, because nobody in the 60s would have ever imagined that we as a country would end up like we are today. Divided, split, and all because the socialist communists have one agenda: give people anything they want, marijuana, heroin, fentanyl, destroy the financial system of America. And the end result, folks, is they're going to have the entire country socially global orientated. And that means your freedom's in, everything ends, and they're saying it's supposed to be good for everybody. That nonsense is what Adolf Hitler told the Germans during World War II. He said to the Germans, if you allow National Socialism to run this country, I guarantee you all a job, I guarantee you prosperity, happiness. And he ran on that nonsense until the day that he killed himself in the bunker in Berlin. And the fact that he killed so many millions of innocent Jewish people in the concentration camps. We just had a service representing 75 years since. Did you see how the media downplayed it? They kind of like obliterated it within one day after talking about it. That's what communism does. They don't want people remembering the past. Because if they don't remember the past, there's nothing for people to relate to what it's all about. Why are the Jews hated today? Why are whites hated today? You know, little children that are growing up right now, they'll have no idea what it's about. Because if the globalists have their way, they're going to obliterate history and say, you don't need to know about all that stuff. We know what's best for you. And this is the way you're going to live, because it's going to be so much better for you in the long run. And that's the nonsense they've been teaching children for 20 years in school. Be who you are. Be hypnotized in your own little world. Be happy. Nonsense after nonsense after nonsense. And now people aren't able to grasp reality anymore because they have so many other things that's perverting common sense. And that's why we have nothing but insanity in America today. Because of this very viewpoint that communism is some great idea. And that's why they've been pushing all through the media, because the media is controlled by Barack Obama, to destroy America itself. And that's what the communists are doing as their full end-game scenario. Destroy who we are as Americans. Destroy our nation today. And that should scare you even more than the coronavirus. The coronavirus has one agenda, folks. It has one outcome. We're not over it. We still have it. They may have reopened the states, but it does not change the fact that if you don't take it seriously as you did when you stayed at home for 2 months, this epidemic, the pandemic, is going to blow up worse than it was during those 2 months from March to April, where people were like, we'll stay home, we'll do what the government says. And now the government is saying, well, you know, you want to go back to work, do it. This way it can start up the coronavirus even worse than it had been during that time when we made all these estimates about we're going to need all these hospitals to have 5,000 beds and 8,000 respirators or ventilators and all the rest of it. That's misinformation by the communists, because that's what they want. Destroy the infrastructure of America, then you destroy everything else about what is America. So wake up, folks, to what's going on, because if you don't, if you keep just kind of like, oh, you're a conspirator, you're this, you're that, you just ignore it. That's what you're doing. You're not looking at it from the perspective of what are the facts and what's going on. You just want to ignore it all and then think, oh, it's going to be so much better after Obama's back. Oh, it's going to be so much greater when we got a communist running our country. Ask the Holocaust survivors in Russia if it ever worked when Adolf Hitler was running his National Socialist Party. They will tell you it was a total sham. It was a total joke. It did not help anybody. It only helped to divide Germany and to destroy 100, 200 million Jewish people in those concentration camps. That's what communism is. That's what socialism is, folks. That's scary. But you can still do something if you take responsibility. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you will continue to watch future videos that I make, because I try to share things on these videos of other subjects too, because it's my chance to reach out and share with people the reality of what is happening in our country today. So thank you for watching my video.
I'm going to sing a song about a square, and I want you to look all around your room for one. But remember, a square has 4 straight sides, and each side is just as long as the other, and it has 4 corners that are the same size.
Famous Hollywood director Steven Spielberg goes on the offensive by releasing a sequel to his infamous sci-fi classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Coming this Christmas in 1978, the most talked about motion picture ever since the Star Wars holiday special. Spielberg calls the film Little Boy Lost. It is a true story of a 6-year-old boy who saw and was abducted in his room one night via extraterrestrials. Now believed to have been the Pleiades, who Betty and Barney Hill saw in 1961 while driving in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you ever had any doubts about alien abduction, you won't anymore after watching this motion picture. Critics are saying this is the most intense film ever made by Spielberg since his horror classic, Jaws, in 1975. The film was based on Jay Anson's book under the same title and promises to keep the overall plot based on his teleplay. Anson is most remembered for his work in the Amityville Horror, a book that is supposedly in the works to be released in 1979 by American International Pictures. Don't be afraid, They Won't Hurt You is the most famous quote of this film, and you won't be sleeping anytime soon after you leave the movie theater. This film was rated PG, parental guidance suggested, released by Columbia Pictures Industries.
peculiar thing about this.
That you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. That you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
around the world challenged the powerful, and they bring all of this to every story that breaks.
We've got breaking news, and it's good news.
And touches your heart.
How do you even say thank you? Thank you is not big enough.
I made this.
The images shocked the world. Relentless bombings. Stunned survivors.